I think the sense in Poland, at least, is there's great frustration at our inability to stand up to what is seen in Poland as a Hitler-esque dictator on the march.
Now, we've been speaking about Poland over the last few days because Russia sent 19 drones into the country, and Russia may have breached the airspace of another NATO member now. The Defence Ministry of Romania scrambled fighter jets after a drone incursion during Russian strikes on Ukraine. There's been no word yet from the Kremlin. Let's discuss preparations, I suppose, for how to take on an ever more brazen Vladimir Putin with Matthew Campbell, foreign features editor for The Times and The Sunday Times, who's visited Poland over the last few days to just find out how Polish people are preparing for conflict. Matthew, good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start there. To what extent are preparations for war actually and actively underway in Poland?
Well, preparations are well underway in Poland. In fact, the defense spending of Poland is the highest in Europe at the moment. It's just under 5% of GDP, and it's rising. And apart from that, they have, one of the largest armies in Europe now. They have a huge territorial defense force as well. And besides that, they have an army of civilian so-called preppers who are stashing food and supplies and building shelters in the forest and getting ready generally for whatever disaster should engulf the country. And of course, let's bear in mind that Poland has a long history of disasters. And as one of these preppers put it to me, I'm not talking about natural disasters, I'm talking about Russia.
When it comes to Poland's political outlook as well, is there a kind of a top-down sense of conflict, if you like? Because there were some quite startling comments from the Polish Prime Minister this week about being closer to war than ever before, basically, or comparing to World War II in any case.
Yes, but the war in Ukraine is right on Poland's doorstep, obviously. And so they have a much more acute sense of the war than perhaps we do a bit further away over here. And I spoke to one manager of a defense company. It makes drones very successfully, which they sell in Russia. And he'd just come back from London, actually, to this. He'd been attending the trade fair in London, the arms fair, rather. And he said, oh, yeah, I saw young people in the pubs having a great time laughing. We in Poland, we sometimes in parts of the country can hear the explosions. And then with these drones landing out of the sky, that gives it a new edge for even for Poland, right on the front line, as it were, on the eastern flank of NATO.
Yeah. So there's that approach as well. What about the preppers? I'm intrigued by how the preppers are preparing indeed for war. And your assessment, Matthew, on whether these people are odd, whether they're a bit mad, or whether actually they've got a kind of authentic and genuine belief that what they are doing is what everyone should be doing.
Yeah, no, well, there's a long history of this in Poland, and it's all because of history and geography. I went up to the area very near Russia, basically. There's this Russian territory of Kaliningrad on the Baltic coast. I was about 50 miles from the border in northern Poland. And I met various people there who, they're in the middle of a forest, basically. It's a very beautiful forest area. It's the Polish Lake District. And there was one chap in particular who spends a lot of time, traveling in the woods. He's a hunter. He's got lots of supplies of tinned goods and preserves in his garage, but he builds shelters in the forest. And he also gives seminars. You can learn how to catch a carp and identify an edible frog, what plants you can eat, what mushrooms are dangerous, and that sort of thing. And he's been doing that for years. But now he says, in the light of recent events with these drones turning up and putting Poland really on edge, he's had loads of calls from people saying, can we come and get some training from you? We want to do what you're doing. And there's a whole network of these people in Poland. And this guy, Piotr Cirillo, who I met, is actually writing a book on the subject with one of his fellow preppers, a prepper in Warsaw, a more urban prepper. So it's not just up on the border. They're all over the country. and the guy in Warsaw is getting his grab bag ready. The government itself, I mean, these people, they do have reason. It's not extreme, the measures they're taking, because the government itself has issued guidance on what to put in your escape bag, so-called escape bag or survival kit, a torch, a knife. And there's lots of debate going on among people about what's the best knife to use. Can you take a Swiss Army knife? And one person said to me, "Well, no, you need something bigger, but not a Rambo knife. Don't get me wrong, but something that will, settle a dispute fairly quickly if someone tries to argue with you and you want to show them off." So that's the debate going on in Poland at the moment. What are the best goods to put in what are the best foods to put in your stash that will survive? Tinned foods and preserved vegetables and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and it's kind of a lower level, perhaps, but an example nonetheless of this idea that you can talk yourself into conflict. But I mean, I say that also with an eye on what Putin is up to. These incursions into Polish airspace, into Romanian airspace, it looks like as well. But what should NATO be doing to try and get in the face of Putin and these kind of ever more brazen activities?
Yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
This has been going on for years now. The way Poland sees it is that this is, Russia up to its usual tricks, sending drones into Poland and then saying, "Oh, well, it was an accident." A line incidentally repeated by Donald Trump in the White House. Poland vehemently denies any accident, says that this is obviously provocation. We've seen it over the past few years all over Europe, in fact, with attacks on our infrastructure under the sea, pipelines, meddling with GPS signals. Ursula von der Leyen's plane the other day was forced to land without GPS guidance in Bulgaria, I believe. That sort of thing has been going on a lot, and yet the sense in Poland is that we're not doing enough to show Putin that we're serious, and that so long as we don't, then he'll carry on doing this. It's a bit like perhaps in Crimea in 2014, when those little green men appeared on the streets, and there was lots of debate over here about, oh, what's all that about? Who are they? Obviously they were Russian troops invading Crimea, but nobody could quite stomach the idea or wanted to face it. And I think the sense in Poland, at least, is there's great frustration at our inability to stand up to what is seen in Poland as a Hitler-esque dictator on the march.
Yeah, and it's ever more real for the people in Poland. Matthew, thank you so much. Great to speak to you.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time. That is Matthew Campbell, who is foreign features editor for The Times and The Sunday Times. Go and have a look at the pictures that accompany Matthew's reporting today. Poland's war machine is ready for Russia. So are the preppers. You can see the camp in the woods that he was describing to you there, pictured in the article. And also some really helpful outlines as to how exactly Poland is ready for conflict. The active military personnel, the defence spending that he was talking about, the number of tanks, the number of aircraft, the number of helicopters, all of that is outlined for you in Matthew's article today.